All right, we're back. Dynasty Trades in 5. I'm Clay.
Shane.
I'm Scott. Almost St. Patrick's Day. That's all I had today. All I had to think about.
There you go. All right, so tonight we're gonna do part 2 of the 2022 rookie class series. So in part 1, it was a few shows ago. Go back and look at it, but we pretty much covered the first half of the first round. And tonight we're gonna look kind of at the second half of it. You know, if you weren't able to flip that 109, for example, for a 23 first, like what are we doing? You know, should we pick a player there, draft someone, buy a veteran? But as always, let's start with the trade. So would you take the 105 or the 109 and 112?
I'll say this. We generally talk about super flex leagues, but I'll just throw this out there. If you're in a one quarterback league, I wouldn't be trading back here because it gets really ugly really fast. In super flex, though, yeah, I'm fine. And I'm actually good with flipping that to two later picks. And Scott has some good reasoning as to why. So we'll let him do the smart reasoning why.
Yeah, I mean, I think the initial notion is, you have to wait to see where the tiers break out. If you catch yourself in the last of a tier of 5, then you're going to look back and go, that was a terrible trade. But I think more likely with the way we're seeing this class trend right now, you're going to end up with maybe a consensus 101, 102, maybe 103. I mean, the last show we kind of talked about getting into that top 3 or better. Like if you can do that, I think this class is going to produce. And again, the advantage of a top 2 or 3 pick is you get to wait until all the information is in front of you. Then you can say, okay, who are the stud profiles plus the stud draft capital plus the stud landing spots. And all I need is like 2 or 3 of them. And I'm going to get one, at 105, 106, you're hoping, some stars have to align. So I think more likely the way this class is trending, you're going to end up seeing a really flat tier, probably hit right at that 104, 105 spot. And everyone's going to want to trade back. And if I could tell you everyone's going to want to trade back, then you want to trade back now before everyone wants to trade back. Because then if you don't, then everyone's going to be on the clock. Well, hey, I'm at 108. I like 4 guys here. Why would I move up to the 105? I don't care. It's more just for forecasting the tiers. And I just don't see this class as being one that is going to generate buzz for 5 significant players. And so I think you're just basically getting 2 shots for 1 here. Honestly, your 109 and your 112 could be just as good as your 105 this year.
Yeah, so let's talk about that kind of forecasting the NFL draft, what you were looking at, how many QBs, RBs, and wide receivers are being taken in the first 2 rounds. Go ahead, Scott. Keep going.
Yeah, I mean, right now you can go through and you can do your own rankings. I know Shane has his opinions on what players he likes and doesn't like. Clay does too. But if you just separate yourself from that and you look at this class, and we're just going to be conservative because we want to give people the most actionable advice. So if we're trying to say best case scenario, this class could go 17 or 18 deep, that's a little bit, I think, too peachy because you're going to have players that land in spots where you hate and the market value drives them down. You're going to have players that get lesser draft capital than you think. So I think let's just be conservative and say 3 quarterbacks go in the first round. Could be 4, could be 5, but let's just say 3. Okay. So we know that's 3 players that are going to go in the first round of your super flex draft. Now that could be 102, 104, 105. If all the quarterbacks go in the top 15 and you love all their spots, well, then you're going to push them up. If 2 of the 3 guys go outside the top 20 and you don't really like the spots, then they're going to fall down. But you're still going to run into that point in the draft where you're like, okay, first round quarterback or running back 4 or wide receiver 6. Which one should I take? And, the quarterback, I think, even if they don't start right away, you give yourself a little bit more time to kind of just wait and see what happens. They hold their value longer. Running backs, same thing. At best, we probably have 3 running backs that go in the prime range, which is like the first 64 picks, first 3 rounds or first 2 rounds. When you're starting to get into round 3, early round 4, yeah, those guys can be viable. They can land in a great spot and you can push them up. Michael Carter, Trey Sermon, Darrell Henderson from a couple years ago. They always get moved up when you think, oh, well, that guy's going to start. But let's just say first and second round running backs. You're probably going to have 2 to 3. Let's assume, I think CJ Spiller may fall out. I truly think he falls out of the first 2 rounds. So let's just say 2. Say Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall. So we have 5 right now, right? 5 players.
Yep.
Wide receivers. I'm going to assume that any draft capital inside like the top 40 picks or so is pretty good for a receiver because typically teams don't draft receivers in the top 2 or 3 picks of the draft. You saw like Chase and Waddle last year, like 5 and 6. That's about as high as receivers are ever going to go, right? Rarely are you going to see a receiver go 101 or 102. But these teams at the top of the second round, if they need a receiver, that's usually where there's pretty good profiles that fall. So let's just say right now we have 6 receivers that go in the first 35 to 40 picks. Okay, so we're talking first rounders or really early seconds. So do the math. 6 receivers, 2 running backs, 3 quarterbacks. That's
Shane,
11 players.
That's 11. Oh, you beat Shane to it.
I was actually calculating it. I got my abacus out.
So 11. That's 11 players where I can say I'm comfortably going to get a very strong profile. Let's just call it 1 round versus a really strong profiles in this year's draft. Now, how do you treat that? So I'll turn it over to Shane, but that's kind of my breakdown is like, I think you're going to get a strong first round from a profile pedigree standpoint. Now, how do we actually determine if we like those players versus what the current market value is? And I think that's what we're going to talk about in the show.
Nothing's changed since the combine, right? There's 5 good wide receivers. Have I mentioned I hate this class? Do everything you can to just trade out of this class. Trade these picks for players, man. I traded for Michael Pittman in 2 leagues, and I'm not even a Pittman guy. I feel a hell of a lot more convicted in Pittman than I do than literally any of these wide receivers. They're all not very great. So what would that be? They're good. They're all good. You know what I mean? We have literally no idea which one of these guys is going to be a superstar, if any of them. I'll sit here today and tell you that I think Treylon Burks is going to be the best, but like Scott knows, he's going to get drafted to the Dallas Cowboys, so it's not going to matter. These players aren't good enough where their landing spot isn't going to matter. There's certain players like I could care less where they were drafted. Like Jamar Chase, no matter where he was drafted last year, it would not have mattered. You would have been like, all right, he's the wide receiver 1. You have a class like this, the landing spot's going to affect where their rankings are, which that just tells you it's not a strong class. The fact that you're like, I'd rather have multiple picks in the end of the first round than 1 pick in the middle of the first round tells you that this is not a strong class.
So let me throw a trade in real quick. Would you take the 107 or Keenan Allen?
Keenan Allen.
Yeah, it's going to be a caveat. Can I get a 23 first if I
No,
can't?
you can't. No, this is where we're going. You're not getting a 2023 first because everyone that is in this league is a bunch of people that listen to Dynasty and Chill, Dynasty Trades HQ,
in 20.
Dynasty Trades, and is however long we want to take. So no way. You're not flipping these picks for you. Got to do player or the pick, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty square trade for Keenan Allen because you're probably getting the wide receiver 2 or 3 at that point, and may get the running back 2 or 3. So I mean, I think it's a fair trade. I think the idea with what you just asked with that trade is, I just kind of broke down how I see the tiers, right? I see like 12 profiles that are pretty comfortably first round picks. Now, I don't think the market sees it that way. I think a lot of people on the market see a couple studs at the top. You hear a lot of people say, like, I already know who the 101 and the 102 are going to be. Then I think you see people still valuing like the 103, 104, 105, 106 fairly highly. Not to the point where they'll give up their 23 first if they don't think that's like a 112 next year. But I think they still want those picks, and they're not going for as cheap as you think it would be based on the perception of this class. I think when you get to the late first, those are picks where, like you just asked with Keenan Allen, people are desperate to get out of the late first and they're just like, I'll take anything that I know is a stable asset. And I think that's going to continue. So I think I'm kind of looking at it like the picks I want to get rid of right now are the ones that I think other people still want. The 104, 105, 106, 107. And if the best deal that I can get is not a 23 first, I've already tried that. If I have a 106, I've probably already spammed. I either have the pick now or I don't. And it means most people have probably turned down my 23 first already. But I don't think the level of veteran that I necessarily can get with that pick is comparable to a wide receiver 1 or 2 or a running back 1 or 2 in a class, just based on the perception, whether I like Kenneth Walker or Drake London or not. I feel it should kind of go for more than that on the open market. You know what I mean? So those are the picks I kind of want to trade. I'm fine being stuck with all of my 110s, 111, 112, because I still think what I can get on the open market is less than the profile or the pedigree that I'm going to be able to draft.
Yeah, there's definitely a certain level of player where it gets to, like, if someone's trying to give me Curtis Samuel for one of these picks, yeah, I'm probably going to pass. Juju, even though I love Juju, I'm probably going to go, you know what? At that point, yeah.
Allen Robinson, same thing.
Allen Robinson, meh. I will go ahead and I will see what happens with that 110, and I will love Jahan Dotson more than life itself now. But given the choice between, Jahan Dotson and Michael Pittman, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, well, Dotson's going to finish far below those other two.
Yeah. So how about Mike Evans with the 110?
Michael.
Yeah, I think I go Mike Evans. I think that's definitely a square deal, and I can see people doing that. You almost have to look and buy the veteran that maybe other people are down on because they're not sure on. Like Amari Cooper for a late first. I think I'd consider doing that because everyone's trying to fade him after he goes to Cleveland. Tampa Bay doesn't have a quarterback, but okay, are you going to really evaluate those two guys on their situations? I mean, situations can change, so I think that I'd go Evans there.
How about Darnell Mooney in the 201 or the 106?
That's a good one. Assuming I can't get the 23 first, I like Mooney. I kind of see that as similar to the 105 for 109 and 112 deal. Very similar.
Yeah, it's what I was going to say, and I'm assuming, because what else am I going to do with that 106? I've already taken 2023 picks off the board, shot myself in the face with that one, so I can't now go. All right,
not foot, face, but you survived it.
Yeah, so I can't now go. All right, well, I'll flip that. And so what else am I going to do with the 106? I don't want to make that pick, so I want to trade back again, right? So then I'm banking on hoping I'm going to trade for at least one of those guys. That's going to be Darnell Mooney.
Let's talk real quick about the second round. So what are we thinking about those picks? Like, do you kind of like having a bunch of those like later seconds, kind of just a bunch of darts to throw? Because there's going to be a lot of depth that's pushed down there. Like there's going to be a ton of like Michael Carter-y type running backs and depth wide receivers in the second, right? Are you kind of liking that spot?
Yeah, I'm going to put my strategy out there for everybody. I'm trying to get as many 2022 firsts as I can with the trades we've been talking about for the last 3 months. Flip for the 2023s, trade back, get extra picks, and then try to trade for veterans like we talking about on this show. Once you get outside of that kind of magic range of like the 201, 203 range, I actually love this class. To the point where I will probably be very aggressive trading 2023 seconds and thirds and fourths to get picks in this class. I think this is the best class we've seen in the last, other than 2020, the best class we've seen in the last 5 years in terms of, hey, it's 302 in my draft. I'm going to get a fourth round running back that has a decent profile.
Yep.
Or I'm going to get the wide receiver 11 that goes in the third round that has some sort of trait that I like. You know what I mean? Like this is a class to take shots on running backs, especially. You mentioned Michael Carter. I mean, there is 5, 6, 7 Michael Carters that are going to get drafted at the mid to late third and fourth round, where you're going to go, okay, this guy is immediately the next Chuba Hubbard. Like he can be behind Derrick Henry or he can be behind Joe Mixon or whatever. Like, but you're still going to want him as a next man up. That's kind of the trend in Dynasty right now, is getting these backup running backs that are one injury away from giving you potential RB2 production. And you're getting it cheaper than you are having to pay for the fringe RB2s already on the market.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the market price for Kareem Hunt or Damian Harris or someone like that. And literally, if you draft like Rashad White or even a lower example like Tyler Algier, he's no different than literally Damian Harris. It's just one had the perception that maybe they would be a starter, so their value got jumped up. That's it. So I think this is a great class to, and as much as I love the 2023s, the thing is 2023 is not guaranteed to be better at like the 208. You know what I mean? I think that's the big thing to remember, is just because it's 2023 and there's Bijan Robinson and maybe 4 first-round running backs and 2 quarterbacks on the top 5 picks, that doesn't mean that the 212 next year is any better than the 302 this year.
So would you rather have the 111 or the 204, 208 and call it 301?
If we're doing start 10, I take the 111.
Yeah, I was just looking at the names on the board. The 301 is disgusting. I know Scott just rambled off about and how he likes running backs, and there's definitely like 6 running backs that I like in the second round. We get into the third round of this rookie draft, and guess what? It's no different than any other rookie draft. Every third round of the rookie draft, I don't care how deep the class is, you go, who? Oh, he was good, but he blew out both of his ACLs and then tore his Achilles. Remember that guy? I'll take the 111. Hey, we were talking about running backs. Zamir White. That's going to be my guy in the middle of the second because he was supposed to be a beast coming out of high school, and if it wasn't for tearing every ACL he ever owned.
Well, and listen,
really good.
You don't want to draft. If you just talk about most equity, most bang for your buck, you do not want to draft the wide receiver 15 in a class. You just don't. You don't want to look and say, oh, well, that guy was a 6th round pick, but dude, did you see his 40 time? I'm just going to draft him. Typically, you don't want to draft receivers that are day 3 picks. But if you have a running back that has some decent size or decent metrics and they go in the 5th round of the NFL draft, that's a guy that's going to probably make the roster, which automatically becomes next man up, or he's getting some touches every single week and he's a year away from maybe getting a bigger role. Like, I'm focused more on the running backs. I think this is a really rich class from like RB5 to RB15. There's a lot of guys I like for different reasons. Now, obviously, landing spot and their draft capital is going to matter. If you have a class where you're going to get 15 running backs in the first 6 rounds of the draft or 5 rounds of the draft, I like that class. That gives me a lot of bodies to add. The way I build my teams, typically that's going to be where I'm looking with those 3rd round picks. Take some shots at running backs in this class is basically my message.